Thank you very much, Jose, and we're pleased that San Antonio is getting to host this Hispanic Action Summit. It's clear that the future well-being of the United States depends in a significant part on the future well-being of Hispanics in the United States. And so it's communities like San Antonio and the 14 other cities that this administration has had Hispanic Action Summits in. These communities will largely determine the future success of our country. What you see here today is a commitment across the board, across departments, working together, whether it's education, whether it's health and human services, transportation, and others, to ensure that a community like San Antonio has the full support of Washington as we make important decisions and important investments here for the well-being of our young people and in every other respect. I really, truly want to commend Secretary Duncan and President Obama. I don't believe that there's been an administration before that has been as finely attuned to investing in the Hispanic community as this administration has been. And you see that on display here today.
The mayor, I think, is providing remarkable leadership here, real courage, real vision, and I think our job in Washington is to support great leadership at the local level. And so for all of us to be out here to rally behind San Antonio's effort. San Antonio is trying to increase their college graduation numbers by 100,000 by 2020. Jose talked about what we're trying to do as a nation. We can't get there as a nation unless places like San Antonio are successful. So we want to listen, we want to be a good partner, and we want to encourage, again, the real creativity and innovation we're seeing here. We all know the jobs of the future are going to go to the country that has the best educated workforce, and either that's going to be here in San Antonio and here in Texas and here in the United States, or that's going to be in India, in China, in South Korea, in Singapore. And so that choice is ours. And I think the best thing we can do for our country and for our young people is to make sure they have a chance to fulfill their dreams and graduate from some form of higher education. As the mayor said so eloquently, the future of our country and the future of the Hispanic community are inextricably linked. We cannot be a strong nation if the Hispanic community is not graduating from high school, going on to college, and pursuing their dreams. And so this is not just about doing the right thing for the Hispanic community, although that's obviously hugely important in and of its own right. This is doing the right thing for the country. And so we're thrilled to be here. We want to be a good partner. San Antonio has a chance to help lead the country where we need to go. And if they're successful, it makes me very, very optimistic about where we can go as a nation. Thanks so much, and we're happy to take some questions.
I have a question. As a Hispanic, and I grew up obviously in a Mexican household, there wasn't a lot of motivation from my family to go to college. It was something that came from me to continue going to school. Is there anything being done to motivate parents? Because for us to reach that goal, for students, Hispanic students to graduate from universities, they need someone to motivate them.
So it's a huge issue. So whether it's better parental engagement, whether it's working with various media outlets to get that message out there, I think there has been a cultural issue we have to address, that sometimes families say, okay, you should leave school to go work and help the family financially. And while that's of some small help for a short amount of time, the devastation to that family is huge. And the jobs of the future are not going to be with high school dropouts. The jobs of the future are not going to be with those only with a high school diploma. They're going to be with those who graduate from some form of higher education, be that four-year universities, two-year community colleges, trade, technical, vocational training. So we have to address this in an open and honest way. We have to do it from Washington. We have to do it in the local communities. We have to work with parents. We have to do it with school systems. We have to do it with churches and barbershops and nonprofits and social service agencies. And we need to let families know that the only way the families are going to be successful long term is if young people are completing high school and then pursuing their education beyond.
As far as this area, what's the biggest problem facing the Hispanic community?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's why it's very appropriate that that Secretary Duncan is here as the Education Secretary. The biggest challenge that we have in our community is ensuring that we're well educated, so that this new generation of Hispanics can fully partake in the American dream. We have a long history of generations that in the beginning could not partake in the American dream because of laws and attitudes, and then as time has progressed, what we want is this new generation that can have the world in front of it. You don't have those same barriers that my grandmother had, that a lot of your relatives had, that they're able to take advantage of it. The only way they can do that is if they get a great education And that is clearly the most pressing challenge that we have in our city, with a 40% dropout rate, with a high teen pregnancy rate, with the types of challenges that can sometimes stunt the ability of someone to get a good education.
You're talking about the dropout rate. How do we fix that problem?
That's more than a minute answer, but I think it's a lot of the things that the Secretary has been talking about. Everybody has a role to play. Parents have a role to play, teachers have a role to play, administrators, school board members, those of us in policymakers in local government, state government, and federal government. And what you see here today is the opportunity for all of us as a community, up and down that ladder, to have a good conversation, a great dialogue about what needs to happen. And so, you know, in terms of improving it, everything from parental engagement to a new model for our high schools that get students engaged where their interest is and that's more individualized, to, in the instance of Texas, I think better funding for our schools. Just so many different ways, so many things to do.
So I think, again, what has to change in this country is that going to college and graduating from college has to become the norm. And when you look across the country, for 25 to 34-year-olds, we have less than 40% of our nation has a college degree. I think people are sort of stunned to understand that. The Hispanic community is even lower than that. And so whether you're first generation or fifth generation, I think the idea that you can just graduate from high school and get a good job, that's sort of a distant memory from a bygone era. And so I think having this college-going culture and this college completion culture in every single family, in every single high school, that's their mission, holding universities more accountable for building a culture around completion, that's what it's going to take. And what's amazing to me, we talk about the jobs of the future, but right now in tough economic times today, we have over 2 million high-wage, high-skilled jobs in this country that we can't fill because we're not producing the workers with the skills to fill those. I think we in education have to look ourselves in the mirror and challenge the status quo and think about what are we not doing today to fill those jobs that can't be sent to other countries, that can't be exported. I can't tell you how many CEOs the President and I have met with who say we're trying to hire right now and we can't find the workers to fill those jobs. Something's radically wrong with that picture.
Texas Public Radio, then Univision.
The DREAM Act here, you spoke about it earlier, it's a very hot topic, especially here in San Antonio. Last year there were some students that actually went on a hunger strike trying to get Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison to support it. My question is, why is it that the White House and the DOE is so adamant about getting the DREAM Act passed, and what exactly do you and the White House plan to do about it?
I think we're so adamant about it because it's the right thing for our country. And it's just unequivocal in my mind. It's the right thing for these young people and their families. It's the right thing for the community. It's the right thing for the nation. And we are either going to keep this great talent on the sidelines and on the margins and on the shadows of society, or we're going to allow this great talent to be the entrepreneurs and the innovators and the job creators of the future. And for me, we're cutting off our nose to spite our face here. It just makes no sense whatsoever. I just think our values are absolutely wrong. So we're going to continue to push this very, very hard. The President and I worked on this along with Senator Durbin when we were all back in Illinois. And it's obviously been very disappointing that it hasn't passed yet in Congress, but we are not going to relent. We're not going to back off until this gets passed. And Congress is struggling these days to do anything in a productive way. That's unfortunately the reality. But I'm not discouraged. We're not sort of backing off. And again, whether it's young people or mothers and fathers or grandparents, the more political leaders, again, are hearing what this means and what's at stake for our country and for our young people. We need those voices heard.
And what exactly do y'all plan to do to make sure that it gets passed within the next couple sessions? Yeah,
well, I think obviously we have an upcoming election in November, and sort of depending on what happens in the House and Senate, that will influence the strategy. I would love to get it passed before November. Is that realistic? I'm not sure if that's realistic or not. You never know if an opportunity presents itself. So we'll do what we can leading up to November. Then after that, again, depending on what shakes out in the House and Senate, that will help to influence the strategy. Again, having young people, having community members, having their voices heard, we desperately, desperately need that.
Univision, then CBS.
As you know, Univision caters to the Hispanic community, and we have a campaign that's called Es el Momento, it's time to educate. What can we do to get more support from the federal government? And another question saying, what message can you convey to Latino Hispanics that are not motivated to go to college?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to thank your station for being an amazing partner, whether it's what we've done here in Washington or frankly back in Chicago. You guys were just phenomenal. And I shouldn't say this in this room, but often the media is part of the problem. You guys are part of the solution, and I just appreciate the heart and the commitment at the highest levels from your management team to work so hard in this. So I did a lengthy interview last night and wanted to do everything we can to make ourselves accessible. And so please count us as a good partner. Whatever else we can do, you guys have a penetration obviously into families that we don't have every single day in Washington. You are trusted, you are respected, and the fact that you have frankly advocated on this issue, not just been sort of neutral or been on the sidelines, the fact that you've been so clear, it is time, it is the moment, we have to take this seriously. I think the impact you're going to have in terms of cultural norms and beliefs is probably more powerful than anything we can do from Washington. So count us in as a good partner, put us to work, whatever we can do to help. Again, I have a very selfish interest in that. We desperately need more families to understand how important this is. You guys, again, with the respect you have and the penetration into millions of households around the country, you guys are just an extraordinarily important voice in this. So I just encourage you to please keep it up, and whatever we can do to be better partners, let us know.
Last question to the current.
Secretary Duncan, good schools require good, impassioned teachers. What's your reaction to teacher job satisfaction continuing to fall, and what do you think are the causes?
Yeah, no, it's a real concern, and I think there are a number of causes. I think the biggest cause you see is that so many places are disinvesting in education. So many teachers are getting laid off, and we were able in the Recovery Act to save a couple 100,000 teacher jobs. But the reality is we've had hundreds of thousands of teachers laid off around this country. And when you are out of work, or you're seeing your teacher, your partner down the hall being laid off, and you're worried about what's going to happen next, it's hard to be real satisfied with your job. It's a time of high anxiety. So we as a nation have to invest in education. And we either fundamentally see education as an investment or as an expense. And right now, somehow, we have political leaders who are walking away from education. And we have to challenge that. So we're trying to lead by example at the federal level. And while the president basically flatlined the rest of domestic spending in tough economic times, he asked for a $1.7 billion increase in our budget because he thinks this is an investment. As you know, we launched this Respect Project to elevate and to strengthen the teaching profession, but we need everybody, you know, state leaders, local leaders, to invest. And I talk all the time that we have to elevate the teaching profession. We have beaten down teachers, we have demonized teachers. I think teachers are nation builders. That's how they're perceived in other countries. I think they're nation builders here, but we don't treat them as such, we don't respect them as such, we don't compensate them as such.